Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghayril maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Ameen. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghayril maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Ameen. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghayril maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Ameen. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghayril maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Ameen. 4. Siratal Ikhlas. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huwallahu ahad. Allahu samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huwallahu ahad. Allahu samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huwallahu ahad. Allahu samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huwallahu ahad. Allahu samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. 4. Suratul Falaq, the daybreak. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul a'udhu birabbil falaq min sharri ma khalaq wa min sharri ghasiqin idha waqab wa min sharri nafathati fil 'uqad wa min sharri hasidin idha hasad. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul a'udhu birabbil falaq min sharri ma khalaq wa min sharri ghasiqin idha waqab wa min sharri nafathati wa min sharri nafathati fil 'uqad wa min sharri ghasiqin idha waqab. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul a'udhu birabbil falaq min sharri ma khalaq wa min sharri ghasiqin idha waqab wa min sharri nafathati fil 'uqad wa min sharri hasidin idha hasad. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul a'udhu birabbil falaq min sharri ma khalaq wa min sharri ghasiqin idha waqab wa min sharri nafathati fil 'uqad wa min sharri hasidin idha hasad. Surat al-Nas. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul a'udhu birabbin nas, malikin nas, ilahin nas, min sharri waswasil khannas, alladhi yuwaswisu fi sudurin nas, min al-jannati wan nas. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul a'udhu birabbin nas, malikin nas, ilahin nas, min sharri waswasil khannas, alladhi yuwaswisu fi sudurin nas, min al-jannati wan nas. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul a'udhu birabbin nas, malikin nas, ilahin nas, min sharri waswasu fi astaghfirullah. Min sharri waswisu fi sudurin nas. Astaghfirullah. Qul a'udhu birabbin nas, malikin nas, ilahin nas, min sharri waswisu fi khannas, alladhi yuwaswisu fi sudurin nas, min al-jannati wan nas. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul a'udhu birabbin nas, malikin nas, ilahin nas, min sharri waswisu khannas, alladhi yuwaswisu fi sudurin nas, min al-jannati wan nas. We're gonna run that back one more again. Astaghfirullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Kul a'udhu bi-rabbin nas, maliki nas, ilahin nas, min sharril wasil khanas, alladhi waswisu fi sudurin nas, min al-jannati wan nas. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, al-Fatihi lima ubika, wa katimi lima sabaka nasir, bil haqi bil haqi wa hadi ila Siratika Mustaqim wa ala alihi haka kadrihi wa miqdarihi ladhi. And tonight we'll do one, let's see, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Tonight we'll do Ya Rahman Ya Rahim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi bima yashra'u lishanaka faja'a bijahi afdali min lillahi kalaja'a. Hamdili Rabbin Kareeman la sharika lahu wa sadri al yamando ransanti al mala'a. Muhammadan salawatullahi fi abadin. Alayhi fi asbihi kulibihi kala'a. Adhu ilahi ladi amat mawahibuhu. Li jumlatil kalkima yaktaru man bara'a. Najaytuhu jala'a. Wa man waka rahmani takri mahadin. Wa kuli man lagin baria. Rahmana hambli jamio. Kalki rahmataman yuniyani shariman karanahu kara. Hud muta Mustafa and kuli mafsadatin wataha mil kalakaya minjada unbada'a. Ya Malik al Mukiya minjala and kawadin or hamja miwara ya hadi and rada'a. Ya Malik al Mukiya minjala and kawadin or hamja miwara ya hadi and rada'a. Ya Malik al Mukiya minjala and kawadin or hamja miwara ya hadi ya rada'a. Mahauta malka naha hukalbu min durari bijahi after liman lillahi kalaja'a. One dua Ibrahim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Surely I've turned myself to thee, O Allah, striving to be upright to thee, the originator of the heavens and the earth. And I am not the polytheist, for surely my prayer, my sacrifice, my life, and my death are all for Allah. The Lord of all the worlds, no associate has thee, and this is my commanded. And I am of the submitting ones. O Allah, thou art the king, there is no source but thee, thou art my Lord, and I am thy servant. I have been unjust to myself, and I confess my faults, so grant me protection against all my faults. For none grants protection against faults but thee, and guide me to the best of morals, for none so guides to the best of morals but thee, and turn away from me the evil and the indecent morals. For none can turn away from me the evil and the indecent morals but thee. O Allah, make Muhammad successful and make the true followers of Muhammad successful, here in the wilderness of North America and beyond, as thou did make Ibrahim and the true followers of Ibrahim successful. For surely thou art praised and magnified in our midst. And O Allah, send thy barakas upon Muhammad and upon the true followers of Muhammad, here in the wilderness of North America, as thou did send thy barakas upon is forever and ever. Upon our Darrah, Cheikh, help him at and who are in the dark. Cheikh Ahmad.
Bismillah, Cheikh, you're going in and out.
Send healing to those of us imbalanced
continue to be light for this day. All Bake Serene Follow, Bake Serene Sally Who, Bake Sheikh Sufi Bob, Bake Sheikh Sufi Bob, Bake Sheikh Sufi Bob. Ameen, Ameen, Ameen. And this evening, we won't read the 8 verses because we went a little bit long with the opening. But what I will say is, first of all, we want to thank Sheikh Farad for his wisdom and for walking us through step by step this magnificent aside of Kaatiman. It should be clear by now that Sheikh Farad is well familiar with this aside and well able to bring us through this aside, as well as give us guidance with respect to healing ourselves, with respect to staying well, and with respect to walking this word path with this aside and with the teachings of Sheikh Dubamba. With that being said, we turn the mic over to Sheikh Farad. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, beloved Sheikh and family. I pray that all is well with you all and that you are feeling good like Allah always should. We thank you, beloved Sheikh, for that opening and the niyyah of your prayers. In the latter part of it, it was breaking up, but I felt the spirit nonetheless. That last verse in Surah Falak always catches me up as well. So I was really, really relating to you in that moment. Alhamdulillah, thank you for your prayers and your introduction. We start off in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the originator of all life, the author and source of all truth. Allah, the self-created one, a living God, who originated himself, his second self. In Sufic terms, we would say the Nur of Muhammad was the first intention and everything else was created out of that. And so now we know that he lives in his creation. And as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught, he lives in and on through the person of his people. We thank Allah for all of the prophets and all of the revelations that they brought to uplift fallen humanity in our decline and in the spiritual amnesia of our fall. In his beneficence, he always sent prophets and revelations. And in the community of those prophets and their revelations, there were always masters who were able to extract the esoteric points, the secrets, practices that go beyond the veil, that allow one to access the true spiritual power of the teaching. And so we thank Allah for those prophets, the master of them in Muhammad, the most powerful of revelations and the last revelation, the Holy Quran. And we thank Allah for the master of those who extracted the esoteric teachings in order to give it to us, in our Kadima Rasul, Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba. As a knower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I would be remiss to not mention the Insan Kamil, the perfected being, the supreme being master that came to visit North America to bring us into the knowledge of Islam, which is mathematics. He left a signature in the leaving of his apostle and student, his one and only disciple, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who we say is his messenger. I thank the two of them for guiding me into the path of self. It was the two of them that guided me to the first book that I saw and read about Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba. During the seeing of that book, received one of the first communications from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And that began a whole new course of study and a whole new way of life for me as I was a young man upon this path. I would also like to thank our beloved Minister Louis Farrakhan for being the reminder of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because we know that there were forces at work that were doing their best to write him out of history and to erase the work that he did, not just socially among Black America, but the Islamic impact. A lot of people like to devalue the Islamic impact and to try to minimize the Honorable Elijah Muhammad into a Black leader. This is a grave mistake. And one of Sheikh Fard's missions is to make this very, very plain that it's a mistake in giving you the value of what he got from his teacher, the Insan Kamil Master Fard Muhammad. So, of course, we have to mention the one in our midst that spent the entirety of his life, just about the majority of his life, going and living among the masters to grab this and becoming a vessel, an instrument for Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba in order to come back and to teach us here in the wilderness of North America. I speak of our beloved Sheikh Sufi Ba, who appointed and assigned me to give this teaching on Kaatiman, is in the name of all of these righteous names. And in the name of you, Allah's holy people, that I greet you in the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. Pardon my lengthy introduction, but it's always important to pay homage as we build a foundation on this depth, the greatest depth of teaching that we could ever receive. We are in a very, very important time in history as Allah is perfecting his light, and we are the instruments of that perfection. And this teaching from Insan Kamil Master Fard Muhammad, and this teaching of the masterful, powerful practices and esoteric extracts from the Qasides from Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, which we call the Fordaniya way, is upon us. And this is a very, very important time in history, because we're living in the time where Allah's light is actually being perfected. And we get to be the vessels of that perfection. So this is a beautiful time to be in and to be involved. So we spent this is part 6 of our series, Kaatiman and Dietary Spirituality. For those of you all who are used to hearing a Dr. Detox lecture from Dr. Wali, now Sheikh Farad, you're used to me talking more on the dietary part, which of course Sheikh asked me to add that. But this time he got a different kind of a feel for our presentation, because we talked almost totally on the spiritual. We started, I think, the first 2 or 3 talks talking about diet, but then the majority of these talks we've been dealing with esoteric. So it's a different kind of eating that we're talking about, as Sheikh Sally put it. We're feeding on a different kind of a bread, and then we're going to finish it up dealing with the nutritional. But the main point of these last 4 lectures, these last 4 talks, was to get you to see the value of the Qasides of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba. In particular, Kaatiman, because this particular Qasid is what we're teaching on, and it mentions the dietary part, it mentions the Shariat part. And Sheikh Farad said, I'm considering this the restrictive law of Murtaz. Really, every Murid should have it embodied, because we know that there's levels to realization, and Islam is the first one. Our beloved Sheikh Sufi Ba says that Marifat and Hakikat are built upon Shariat. So the Shariat is the foundation. That's your adab, that's your character, that's your discipline. Those are the moral guiding principles that make you a righteous man or woman. And then on top of that, you're able to go into the inner knowledge and the secrets. And then, the goal is to be an actual manifestation of these attributes and the practices and the formulas and the power so that you could use it to benefit humanity. This is why Abdul, or the slave servant, is one of the highest names that one can receive. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad in his history talked about this name. And Master Farah Muhammad, of course, named him Kareem, was his first name. First name was Kareem. Okay. We also know that the Prophet Muhammad, alayhi salam, his name was Kareem as well in the beginning. In fact, some history say they would call him Kareem El Amin, Kareem the Faithful. Okay. And then Master Farah was going to name him Abdul, because he said it was a big name, the biggest of names when you're a slave servant of Allah. See, in this world, being a slave is the lowest state in this world. But to be a slave to Allah is the highest state, because you are then an extreme, absolute instrument of Allah on all levels, where he could use you to walk among the people and to do his miraculous works. So that's a high honor. Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in his young understanding, because we had a hypocrite that was wearing the name Abdul in the history, and Elijah didn't want to be associated with that hypocrite, so he begged Master Farah Muhammad to let him keep Elijah, because he didn't yet. At that point, he didn't go into the deep science of the name, but it's something that he mentioned later. And I think he mentioned it later because he wanted us to understand the error that he made, and mostly to understand the power of that name and what it entails. So in a Kasai like Kaatiman, if one is on the road to Wali, if one is on the road to Katub, if one is on the road to Arif Allah, if one is on the road to Abdul, or any of these high stations, Kaatiman is the perfect Kasai to build the foundation, because it's going to place the Shariat on the inside of you on a molecular level, okay, on a cellular level, on a DNA level. And we explain this using an ancient source, the ancient system of Kemet, in this book, one of my favorite books, which I went into the history in the last few talks, so I won't reiterate that. But this book dealing with the Oracle Tahuti, Tuneta Volume 1. And we use this book because we were illustrating the importance of words of power versus words of meaning, so that you can understand when you do Kun Kaatiman, when you do Astaghfirullah Bihi, when you do Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Sindidi, any of these powerful decrees. See, we are being light when we call them prayers, because when we think prayer, we think in the European and the Christian Western sense of we're begging God for something, hoping that he'll respond. Well, when you reach a maqam like Kadima Rasul, your prayers are now decrees. You're commanding universe with the power and permission of Allah. And this is what is happening in these Kasais of Cheikh Ahmed Bamba. And so before I jump into the next course, this is what I want to do, because something happened that proved, remember I was talking about, we wanted to test this out as scientists. So I'm going to pick on somebody. It's a righteous picking, but I'm going to pick on somebody that's in the call tonight because she showed up. But the test that I was saying played out perfectly. And perhaps she will want to comment on what I'm talking about. But feeding on the verses of Kun Kaatiman, realizations begin to open up. And then there was a question sent that showed that it was a depth, an in-depth understanding that was happening as a result of the Qasida revealing itself to the reciter. And this only happens because the Qasida is words of power. The Qasides are words of power that are seated with the very characteristics, attributes, potentialities, frequencies of Allah. And when you say them, they crack open and open up inside your being, inside of your brain, begin to spill and take over your personality. Okay. So, as I said to focus on verse 5. Now, of course, that didn't mean abandon the rest of the Kasai, but we were dealing with verse 5 because my thesis, my hypothesis, if you will, as a scientist, was that this verse will help you to attain dietary discipline, will help you to obtain discipline, period. Okay. So, of course, that isn't the case with just that verse, but I used that verse because it was dealing with the fear of hunger. Okay. Does anybody have any experience that they want to share? Or perhaps the sister, if you want to share your experience with the verses as you begin to feed from them this previous week. Don't be shy and hide in the back of the class. We know that you're here.
Salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. There she is. All right, I'm doing it. I was trying not to call you out too bad, sister, but thank you for coming forward.
It's okay. Astaghfirullah.
Okay. So did you want to share your the experience that you were sharing with me that you fed when you fed from the verse?
Yeah, the experience I had after I started listening to it, when I started thinking about the very first verse, the questions that came to mind were about the masculine and feminine aspects of the Kasai. It made me question about the veil. It made me question about the covering. And it made me question about sharing how much information that I know, how much knowledge that I have when I first enter a situation. One moment.
So while she's waiting, I'll pick right up and say, and she can cut me off when she comes back, that the questions were really, really, really good. And questions many times show the development. The right question can change your whole world because it's going to open up the potentialities for the answer. And so what the sister was mentioning was that the verse 1 in Kaatiman seemed to be addressing men. And but she said that she could see how that same verse could be interpreted by women.
Astaghfirullah. I'm back.
Yeah, go ahead. You can pick up the baton now. Go ahead.
Okay, so the specific experience that I had was when I returned from Senegal, and I was excited because I had just taken my Shahada and I just taken Bayat, and I wanted to practice Islam here. So I went to the Nation of Islam that's in my town. And when I got there, they were like, how did you find us? Like, what brought you here, essentially? And then I was like, I had my prayer beads. I was like, I took my Shahada, I took my Bayat, and my only experience was directly from living in Senegal. So that was my only reference to how everything is done. And I felt like when I started saying those things, I felt a wall go up. I felt like something happened between us. And this was before I had read the Kaatiman. So then afterwards, when I read it and then I started thinking about what it was saying, I was like, I should have changed my approach. But I'm a very transparent person. So if you ask me, I'm just going to tell you. And I was so excited with the things, I didn't realize that perhaps some of the knowledge I should not have shared. Like, not that I shared anything, but like I shouldn't have said everything I said up front. But I think it was still fine, alhamdulillah. But I learned a lot after I read that and I processed it and I thought about the situation again.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So would you like to build a little more on the part about the how the conclusion that you came to with the veil, the literal veil that we wear? Because ironically, women in Islamic culture wear the veil more, but as you can see, our beloved Sheikh Sufi wears a veil, the covering over the head. And in fact, all of the religious groups, the head covering is a part of the Eastern, Oriental, indigenous spiritual way to cover your head, whether it's a turban, whether it's a fez, whether it's the hijab. In some parts of like the Sudan, they call talismans hijab, which means protection. So you had brought a really, really good question. Is this, what is this protection of? Is this symbolic of saying protect yourself? Would you like to go a little more into that?
Yeah, I was curious when it said cover yourself, if it was referring to wearing a veil, if it was referring to like covering the fact that you're studying the sciences, that you're searching for the information, like, but then I also was wondering if it meant like, don't be, because like social media, don't be boastful about the information that you have, be more humble and be quiet about the things that you know. Don't draw attention to yourself with the information that you have.
Got it.
And then I think too, the masculine feminine aspect, because I felt like this one does directly speak to men, but then I felt like it could also be interpreted from the female perspective, that exact same line. But then the first line was where I was like, the veil, is it talking about covering myself in that way?
I remember one time our beloved Sheikh Sufi Ba was teaching about the reason that we wear what could be considered like feminine looking garments in terms of being robes, and he said that, you know, because when you're dealing with Allah, the supreme being, you're dealing with the most powerful force. So it's like, it's symbolic of you humbling yourself, almost like if Allah is the most powerful, the most active, the most dynamic force, you know, when you're dealing with polarity, masculinity is active, femininity is receptive. So you putting on a feminine dress or attire is symbolizing being receptive to that force, that most powerful presence, and humbling yourself. I remember Dr. Ava Muhammad, peace be upon her, one of my favorite ministers in the nation. I love Dr. Ava's lectures, and she always would go into metaphysics and things, but she was teaching about this one time. And she was saying that, you know, when it comes to men, speaking to you, that part of your statement, when it comes to men, being that we are made in the image and likeness of God, she said, sometimes that essence is, she used the allegory as almost like God looking at himself, literally. And of course, you know, it's not just allegorical, but she says, but because we don't display humility with that power, when he sees it, now mind you, she's just using like a parable here to display humility. So she's saying that it provokes almost a destructive element because of a misuse of that presence of power. But she said with us as women, we're humble, we're soft toward him, we're receptive toward him, so it doesn't arouse the same kind of response. And I think that was a brilliant way to put that the more powerful, because as you begin to drink from these kasais, you're going to become more powerful. That's inevitable. It's unavoidable. But what is avoidable is what comes with that is mishaps, trials. And then at the worst case, if you misuse the power, you can risk wrath and destruction from Almighty Allah himself. So cover yourself and stay humble. Now that's one layer. The other layer we talked about was there's masculine, the question sister asked was, is there masculine and feminine aspects to each Kasai? So of course, we know Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba wrote Kasai specifically for the sisters, but he didn't say we couldn't recite those Kasaids, nor did he say the others couldn't be recited by women. So the way that I would say look at that is use the law of polarity and apply it to masculine and feminine aspects of yourself. So like knowledge is an active principle. Knowledge is the information going forth. You having the ins and outs of the information. The 5%ers was on to something when they would say this: knowledge is like one, the knowledge is the man, wisdom is the woman, understanding is the child that comes forth from the man and the woman. Well, allegorically, the knowledge and wisdom produce understanding, or your knowledge and the use of it produce your life. That could be like the child. But wisdom has to be protected by knowledge. So that's the covering. So when you're reading a Kasai like that in verse 1, when it's addressing men, apply that to your masculine aspects, your logic, your knowledge, the way that you're comprehending the knowledge. He's saying, you know, those who are seeking. Well, we went into what seek means. Where we seeking is in Seker, the 99 names. You know, that should be approached with a certain attitude, a certain humility, to avoid particular things that come with seeking. Because with this kind of seek, is not going to be a lost journey. It's going to be a journey that ends up in power. Our path starts with La ilaha illallah, and Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba say it ends with Allah. So what that means is you start off realizing that La ilaha illallah, Allah is the only reality. But then when you indulge and drink from that, annihilation happens, and the only thing left is Allah. So the La ilaha illallah at the beginning for you will be different than the one that said at the end. The La ilaha illallah at the end is you, like Neo saying, there is no spoon, there's only yourself. You will say there is no me, there is no nothing, it's only Allah. But you saying that brings a supreme level of power, because now the attributes have full range to exhibit themselves, if you will. Okay, did you want to make any more, did you have any more comments or statements or demonstration you want to make, sister, before I move to the next point?
Jared, Jeff, no, I really love.
If you can say it again, since you kind of breaking
different
up.
ways. It gave me a much broader perspective on how I approach all of the readings now, actually. So I'm very grateful for that. Jared, Jeff.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Thank you for that, sister. We appreciate it. So anybody else has been drinking from Kaatiman and want to share? Since we started with the feminine energy, the womb of our order, let's go to another womb. Sister Yashe, what you got for us? Have you been feeding from this Kasai this week?
I just find it interesting that it can speak to like a daily basis, you know, like our health and like our hunger and like our mindset. So
Let me say, hold up, man, Shaitan is busy today because both of you all are breaking up. So we only hearing half of the most valuable things that you're saying. So could you please repeat for us? Yeah, you still
can't hear me?
Yeah, it's like a break, like a digital kind of sound.
Mike, I'm sorry about that.
There we go. Now you better.
Okay, I was the side speaks to like every
Can
You know,
hold on. Can anyone hear anything that she's saying? Because it could just be me. It could just be my phone. Could you all hear clearly? Because the same thing happened with Sister Diarra.
No, I couldn't hear it either.
Man, we know you dropping some bombs.
wow.
Yeah, it's like we know you dropped. Sister Diarra, we might want you to repeat yours too, because it was digital too. It was something that's going on with the Zoom. It
Yeah,
must be some Mercury in retrograde. So.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Maybe we could put it in the chat. Maybe we could text it in the
See,
chat.
now you sound clear. So whatever you're doing right there, just if you can stay like that and say it, we can.
Yes, I was just saying how it speaks to our daily things we have to do, our minds. Also, we're saying how we got to study to show ourselves trials, we can become victorious. So I'm digesting this Kasad very slowly and taking it in. Just the name Kaatiman just ignites something. That's a powerful name, Kaatiman.
Alhamdulillah. Well, we got the probably 98% of that. Yes, ma'am. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, Kaatiman, the name itself does ignite something. I'm always fascinated when I see Kun, because we know Kun is Kun Faya Kun. So when I first saw that, the first thing I thought is, oh man, he's giving the power of Kun Faya Kun in the Kasai. And of course he is, but it's just in a different way. It's in a more grounded way, as you say, sister, that deals with our day-to-day living, our disciplines, our mentality, even our diet, something that's overlooked. I'm so happy to come across a Kasai like this, because even sometime, when we start talking about the diet of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, just like in other religions, in other ways, it gets real quiet in the room. Just Darrah, you talk about a wall going up, go somewhere. I was in a circle of some Moorids here, and I made a comment. They, because when we have the Zikr gatherings, of course, there's always food, and Sheikh Farad always stand out like a sore thumb when it comes to eating, and you could hear the questions almost raising. They won't say it to me, and then sometimes they'll start speaking in Wolof, because they think I don't understand all of what's being said. But and then I'll just come out and say, well, Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba ate a particular way and didn't eat particular things, and then nobody says nothing. So it's just like, this is overlooked. And so I think this may be one of the things where, like in the Fordania logo, the hands across the globe, this may be part of the exchange, because Master Farah Muhammad, in his plan, in his system, the diet is first. He starts off with the diet, saying, when you open up How to Eat to Live, book 1, the very first sentence, Elijah Muhammad says, Master Farah Muhammad told him that no prophet or God or any being could help us until he first changes our dietary habits, because the blood is the consciousness of the man. I'm going to read something from this book, Methunetter, that proves this towards the end of today. So, okay. So yes, thank you, Sister Yashe. Pardon me that we asked you to repeat it, but Mercury is definitely, there's some retrograde this time. So, okay, anyone else get a chance to feed? Sheikh Sally, I was listening to one of your teaching sessions. I would love to hear what you got, because I'm sure you've been familiar with this Kasai for some time, being a Sahaba of our Sheikh for some years now. Have you, do you have any build for this Qasida?
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam. Yes.
Peace, peace. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Yes, sir.
I had a different experience, Sheikh.
Okay.
let me see, because I get tongue tied sometimes. How can I put it in words? It brought me back to when Sheikh Sufi tell us that the Sufi goes on the wings of Shakur and Sabor, patience and giving thanks. To be patient when things are not quite going your way in the physical eyes, and when things go your way, give thanks. As I would say, you know, when my grandma, she say, when it rain on your field, you get your harvest. Don't forget about those who are there. When because Allah and all people. Because I can say through my so-called trials and my trials, the favor and mercy and grace of Allah outweighs the trial. Remind me of our brethren, a son Unique, who they used to call Old Dirty on one of his songs. He said, if I got a problem got a problem till it's gone. Like you said, it's a situation. Like the Sheikh say, the Buddha mind, 99% of the problems in the mind. I'm sitting in front of my mom's house in the yard, I can hear a voice. Okay, Chief, run on sentence. Let me get to the point. With that being said, you know, I eat one meal a day, sometime every other day. I'm a foodie, sometimes I eat. I pretty much got control of my diet. So-called, I don't want to say diet because it got the word die in it, but my intake of physical substance. But being I understand Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you know, I want to speak too much. He say, with all of Allah, Allah is the only reality. But it's a supreme one among us. And we know Allah is closer than the jugular vein. So being at the stage of Sheikh, I understand and know how we invoke and the situation can change. But I've been having a hunger for a kun fire kun to get quick reactions with my physical eyes. And Kun Kaatiman has helped me, how can I say the words? The hunger or the hunger for things to go my way so fast, it brought me back to that attribute of Sabir and giving me to search the soul, because every soul get every good that it earns and every ill that it earns. Because I done had the experience of Kun Fire Kun. I done had the experience. I understand that when they say the name of God is the name of the human being too, it's just in micro form. And when we evoke, and things ain't been going fast the way I want them to, you notice the way, and Kun Kaatiman doing the 55 helped me not so much with my physical hunger, but my spiritual hunger for things to go to accept Allah is the best of planner. I'm micro. Allah is the macro. I'm kind of rumbling on, but y'all got knowledge yourself, brothers and sisters I grew up with.
No, we want you.
I jump around.
No,
so that was kind of like my experience. I was like, I know Sheikh gonna call on me, but how I'm gonna put it in the physical words? Could you? I'm looking at Sheikh Idris Bar and his picture smiling. It looked like he's smiling like, Sally, you doing okay. We get
yes, of course. That's
so
right.
I've been doing it 55 times. Because I can think about you and just curve my hunger. That's funny, man.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay, with that I say peace, family. Thank you. I didn't mean to run on, but you called on me. I had to give an answer.
Oh man, Sheikh, it's always good to hear from you. It's the Prophet, peace be upon him, said in the Hadiths to be the kind of person that when people remember you, they remember Allah. So that's a tremendous compliment to say, you know, you think of me, it curves your appetite. That, you know, all praises due to Allah. That means that I'm doing my best to try to be some kind of example. And really, you know, that's one of my duties among you, is to, because I know that with these powerful formulas that we get from our Sheikh, and you know, a man of many words, and we got the secrets to all the Kutubs in the Qasaids of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, it could put us in a supreme position as Sufis. But we have to have all of it, and the diet is a part of it. And I think that's why it's mentioned in Kun Kaatiman. I think that Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba was knowing that we were going to miss it, so he put it there to help us. So if that makes sense. So yes, thank you for that, beloved Sheikh. Anybody else? Let's do this to make sure that we're in tune. let's do kind of like on Sheikh's classes sometime where he has us to recite the Qasida. Is anybody up for that? We could go and maybe do, since it's a short Qasida, it's only 8 verses, maybe we could all go through the Qasida one time. I don't know if you all have the app. We don't have it on the phone, and I don't think our admin is with us tonight, but for any of you all that have the app, if you could pull it up, and then we could do the Qasida one time each or something like that, if you all okay with that. Has anybody even practiced this Qasida at all? I'm gonna tell you, it's a Qasida that's easy to overlook because it you know, a lot of times when we're in an esoteric quest, it's real easy to get away from what we would consider earth level, base level stuff. And when it, you know, a lot of times when it comes to dietary law, when it comes to disciplines, it's much easier to just engage in loftier ideas. But a Kasai like Kaatiman is kind of a grounding Kasai, because he's telling you it's going to be a given. Right in the Astaghfirullah, he mentions the secrets of the heart. He mentions the ilm laduni that Cheikh always talks about, the knowledge that comes directly to the heart. You pray and get that from Astaghfirullah bihi, and in other Qasidas where it's mentioned. I think even in Ya Rahman Ya Rahim, other ones. But so that's, he's saying in my teaching, if you're a disciple in my order, these things are going to be a given to you. But you need a Qasida like Kaatiman to ground your earth life stuff, your everyday stuff, to make sure that you have the proper adab to be able to carry the power that's in a Qasida. Let me give you an example. A particular Sheikh was telling me a story about a particular Qasida, and he was saying that, now I had heard Sheikh mention this particular Qasida. He didn't mention it by name, so I won't mention it by name. But if you listen to one of the videos, Sheikh was talking about a friend of his who he knew that was doing this particular Qasida, and he ended up in an insane asylum. He wouldn't end up going crazy. Okay. Now, me, the daredevil I am, I'm like, what Qasida was that? Because I already know that meant it had power, but sometimes what we don't realize is that your body has to be the proper light bulb to carry particular wattages of power. So if you're a 45 watt bulb, you can't try to carry 85 watts of power. It's going to blow. As soon as you turn the light on, it's going to blow the bulb. And that's what happens when people get a hold to certain secrets too fast. They haven't tuned their bodies up. So he was saying this particular Qasida was like that, where there was everybody who was doing this Qasida was going mad, walking around talking to themselves, so much to the point where the Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba's family in Senegal had to kind of ban the Qasida for a while. So they took it out of circulation and nobody could recite it because people just couldn't handle it. So one of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba's grandsons had authority. Now listen to this. If this don't make some hair stand up on you, you have not paid attention in the previous classes. Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba's grandson, through his recitation of this Qasida and through, of course, having the proper power, the proper means to be able to carry the power, he had authority with Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba to lock or unlock a Qasida. Remember when I talked about the maqam of a saint? When you reach particular maqams, the universe responds differently to you. So he was able to tell the Qasida, open up for everybody, and then it was safe now for everybody to recite it. This was just shared with me. He says, so yeah, you could grow in such proximity to Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba's maqam that you could actually take the power where you can lock up the power of a Qasida, according to this particular Sheikh that was telling me this. So just think about that. So you know, it's just so much to this what we have, but we can't get so high up in the sky that we think that we don't have to, you know, cover the ground level stuff and diet, mentality, day-to-day living. You notice Cheikh talking to men, of course, directly dealing with how we even supposed to be dealing with women. You know, this is avoiding lusts and different things like this. We can't think that we can just overlook that and that has nothing to do with. Now, of course, the spiritual power part can happen without that, but at what risk? The Quran says, travel the land and see what was the end of those. We always look at how somebody ended up, not what they got, how did they end up? And so the Sufism, Tasawwuf is the safest way to realization. You can get to realization without all of the ADAB stuff. You can get to power, but it's going to be at the expense of your own life because you're going to misuse it. You're gonna abuse somebody and hurt somebody because you don't have the character traits to not do so. Why wouldn't you if you don't have purity of your heart? And now you got power over creation. So this is why in the ancient world mystery schools were set up. This is why in Sufism initiation is set up. This is why submission to a sheikh. All of these things were built into the culture because we've been here so long that we figured out the trial and errors of how to make it there safely. And submitting to Allah's will through the Sharia laws, taking the hand of a sheikh, which is allegorically like submitting to Allah directly, because you as a man submitting to a man, it has to be somebody living. You have this in Bhakti Yoga. You have this in other systems where only in the West where you don't have the guru and the disciple relationship. That's a Western thing. The West is the only place you get the self-made guru, where you don't have a master, but somehow you're a master. Everywhere else in the world where we are and were, you got to submit to somebody. Somebody claims they're a master. First thing we ask is who was his sheikh? Who was his lord? Who was his lama? Who taught him? Even as a martial artist, who was his sifu? You're not just going on YouTube becoming a master Shaolin teacher. That's just I was out one day a couple of weeks ago, and it was a guy who was telling people that he was a disciple of the Shaolin Temple, literally, and he was saying something about like Bruce Lee was his teacher or some stuff, and he was a younger guy. He didn't say literally, but he was trying to say he connected to Bruce's energy, which I was okay with that. But when he started talking about technique, then he started demonstrating them. Now, a martial artist is going to see you right away. So I said, who is your teacher though? Like, who literally taught you? He said, oh no, I just studied some stuff. See, you might have got your head chopped off in an indigenous culture for even saying something like this. How dare you walk around saying you're a master and you can't even submit to somebody else's mastery? So Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba in a qasida like this made it easy for us to even submit to a sheikh, because when you take this Kaatiman, it develops the receptive, submissive characteristics into the heart. All you got to do is just imbibe and eat and drink from the qasida. It's going to automatically make you a particular level of receptive that your sheikh can come in on top of that and grow you. Does that make sense, family? At all?
Yeah.
All right, any more questions or concerns? I know that once again, we've laid such a good foundation. I feel kind of free to be able to jump around a little bit now, because I think even if you weren't in the other classes, the classes have been recorded, so you could go watch them and you could see how words of power, we talked about the difference, and we could see why I can make a statement like that these are not just prayers, like in the Western sense of what a prayer is, but these are divine decrees. These are literal formulas that shift creation. Okay. In our system, now I'm backtracking a little bit, because we talked about in the previous class how there was a character requirement before you would get particular formulas, because when you give a man these formulas, you're literally giving him the keys to creation. Okay. And there's nothing that can stop, like you can get to the point where you're unstoppable. It would literally take a being that's higher than you to stop you. Okay. So in the Qasidas, though, Cheikh Aqua Dubamba provides once again another shortcut, because a Qaside like Kaatiman builds a dab as it's empowering you. Usually it would the adapt part and the empowerment would be two separate schools. You would be in the adapt part for years before you even you couldn't even ask a question about no formulas over the weather or formulas over nothing, until we can make sure that you're not going to steal from somebody, that we can make sure that you can control your thoughts, that we can make sure, that you don't have lust in your heart. These are things that we have to make sure of first before we'll even hand you. But in the Qasidas, it's all encompassing. It's like an all-in-one. When you recite it, it's purifying the heart. It's giving you a dab. This is why Sheikh Sufi Ba says that each Qasida is a sheikh. So what sheikhs are you hanging out with? Well, I can tell you the ones I'm hanging with. Kun Kaatiman, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Astaghfirullah Bihi. What is it? Muhabbu Nafi. These are sheikhs that I hang with. They're with me daily. And they're giving me a dab, giving me particular characteristics. And it's funny because you notice the changes. You already know, developments that you have, but you should be able to see very rapidly where the Qasida is changing you, is growing you, like rapidly. In the 2 years, the development that I've received as a Sufi, it can far outweigh probably everything that I've gone through in my 30, because this will be my 36th, almost 37th year in Islam. And in this last 2 years, going into 3 years, May 9th, this year was the 3rd year. Everything else has been catapulted. It's like the Qasidas are like amplifiers that just went in and got everything that was already there and just grew it way faster. Purified what shouldn't be there, took people out that shouldn't be here in my life, added ones that should, and then grew me. And all I had to do was just sit with the Qasida. I didn't have to go chase people, find this and that. All I had to do was just sit with the Qasida. So that's the power of that. Okay, I'm rambling now, so let's move on. It's a good ramble though, because these are things that I'm telling you that I know for sure. This Qasida will keep lust away from you, because that's in verse 13. If you do that, if that is an issue, just take verse 13 and keep using it. If dietary discipline is an issue, use verse 5. Right? If you being tempted easily by stuff, go to verse 14. All you got to do is just read in English what the verse is saying, and that is telling you what the verse will do. That verse, but the verse is not just a phrase, it's words of power that are seeded with the ingredients for the thing that it's saying. Right? If you're a person that feels like you're on the fence all the time and you're wrestling with this world versus the next world, use verse 15. Because in verse 15, it says, do not sacrifice the hereafter for this world. So that'll eliminate that temptation. Right? And then verse 16 won't play out. You won't be a person that'll regret it, because you won't exchange this world for that world. You won't exchange light for darkness. Any questions so far? Okay. So now what I'm going to do, does anybody want to give Kun Kaatiman a run, just one recitation? If you have it on the phone somewhere, or have it maybe printed out. Anybody want to try to give Kun Kaatiman a recitation? I think we could all benefit from that. Okay, we all playing shy today. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum. The Salihu now is among us. Thank you for joining the class tonight, beloved. Okay, so maybe I'll give one recitation before we close out then. Any questions, concerns, observations before I move to this next part? I want to go further into this words of power thing that we were talking about from last week. I am doing some extensive investigation on the history of this Qasida that I want to talk about in the last week, because I didn't get as much history as I wanted to have on what was going on around it, because you can learn a lot about the Qasida as well from knowing what was happening when it was being written. When it was written, there's 3 categories: during the exile, before the exile, and after, and each of those has their own levels, but also the personal things that were going on during the time. Okay, so let me ask you this: for anybody that has heard my the previous 3 talks that we did on Kaatiman, can anybody tell me the difference in words of power, just in your own words, the words of power versus words of meaning, what we were talking about in terms of why these Qasidas are so powerful? Can anybody give their own definition of that?
Sorry, Cheikh, could you repeat the question one more time?
Okay, so the question is, in terms of when we talked about in the previous 2 or 3 talks, we talked about the difference in words of power or words of meaning, as we were painting a value on why the Qasides work, what make these different than just regular prayers. So just to see who has been paying attention at all, the question is, what is the difference in a word of power and a word of meaning, in your own words?
Okay, Bismillah. So from what I gather, words of power are something that's like, obviously holds power, versus words of meaning, they just have a definition. And like the example you gave, the word own. So people would try to come up with a definition for what own means, but there's no true definition. And then also, like in the Yoruba language, we say Ashe, and people say that Ashe means the creative power, but there's really no definition. And there's a lot of words like that. And so dealing with the Arabic language versus the English language, the Arabic language is filled with words of power. So dealing with the Quran or the Qasidas of Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba, we will always be saying words of power versus words of meaning, even though we try to translate it and create meanings out of it. But the creative force behind the words are more powerful than our ideas or our translations. That's what I gather from.
Amen. Amen. And I would add to that, when you're saying there is no definition, there's no intellectual definition, because you can have a frequency definition of something, but when we say that, we're saying that the brain doesn't register it in that way. So if I tell you, if I give you, let's say, if I go to ancient Kemet and I give you the chant that gives you access to Anubis, that particular deity, okay? But then you see a picture of Anubis is a dog. So if I ask you to define dog, your brain is going to do something different than when I tell you to give me the words of power that go with Anubis. These are 2 different functions of how the brain responds. It's not going to be left brain at all. It's going to be all imagination, creative power. I remember I was telling you all, my Tijani Sheikh, who I walked with before I met Sheikh Sufi Ba, he's a naturopathic doctor of about 27 or 28 different degrees. One day I was with him and he was showing me all his, accomplishment and degrees and so forth. And I said, I would really like to see your library of books because I want to know what went into making you, like your mind the way that it is. And he looked at me real stern and he said, the Zikrs have made me into me. Like he was almost insulted that I said that. Like, it's nothing intellectual that made this. Yalatif made me into me. But when you understand it from the standpoint of the words of power and words of meaning, you understand exactly what he's saying. That when I say these words of power, the brain fires off neural pathways that are dormant, but the neural pathways are the same responses to Almighty Allah's brain, if I could say it like that. The same responses that the universe responds to Almighty Allah. When you say the name Rahman, that same happening happens in the brain. Do that long enough, annihilation happens. Now there's a oneness. Now you are Rahman. So he was saying, my prayers make me me. You can't find me in no book nowhere that would figure out how I'm me. You got to do 7, because he became a Sufi. He took Bayat at 7 years old. He's in his late 70s. So he's been doing these zikrs and stuff for 70 years. So that's the difference in the original man's way. Our ancestors in ancient cultures figured out a way to put libraries of information inside of words of power. See, they can burn down a library. Think about that. Think about if we didn't have words of power, if we didn't have chants. You can burn down a physical library, but you can't burn the words of Allah. You can't burn the 99 names up. At best, you can hope that they're forgotten about. But as long as those names are somewhere, and this may have something to do with why Sufic circles have been secretive, because this was a way of hiding the knowledge and preserving it. El-Hafiz, the preserver, preserving the knowledge. So now once we want to display the knowledge in one word, there's a whole library in that word. Well, with Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba, it was the same thing. So in one of the Qasidas, I think is, I forget what Qasida it is, but he says, thou hast given me the secrets of all of the Kutubs and made me attain the station of all of the Kutubs. So he's literally saying in that Qasida, all of the Kutubs, I have all of their secrets. So what do you think is going to happen to you if you embody that Qasida? You're going to have all of the secrets to the Kutubs. This is the kind of power that you have access to with the writings of Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba. So I would say, let's take the divine shortcut. Stop wrestling with Shariat. Just do Kun Kaatiman. I wouldn't even, if I had, by Allah's grace, a disciple that came to me and was saying, well, Sheikh, I'm wrestling with the prayers, I'm having trouble, I would tell him, okay, stop that. This is your assignment. Recite Kun Kaatiman at least twice a day. Better than that, if you could just do a dua at the 5 prayers a day, do Kun Kaatiman after a dua. So instead of, since you can't seem to do Salat, do a Al-Fatiha 5 times a day and do Kun Kaatiman right afterwards. And watch what's going to happen to him 2 weeks later. He's going to be at least making 3 Salats a day because his inner being is being... So let me correct the mistake I made last lecture. I said, when you say the Qasides, you're conditioning your being. That was a mistake. You're unconditioning your being. See, English conditioned us. We're actually conditioned now. We're hypnotized, basically. And when we use the 99 names, when we use the Arabic language, which is all words of power, perhaps maybe one of the few languages in existence that are all words of power, Quranic Arabic, all words of power. That's why the Quran says these are the verses of a book that makes manifest. If you use some words that's in this book, it's going to make things happen. Because the universe is set up to respond to Allah's words. So when we say Kun Kaatiman, we're unconditioning the lack of disciplines. It's like you're deleting the lack of discipline right out of the DNA. You're not conditioning it into the DNA. You're removing the condition out of the DNA. So this is literally a cleansing. Literally. This is why Cheikh Aqua Dubamba could say something about Astaghfirullah Bihi, like the person that memorizes this, I live in them. Because Astaghfirullah Bihi cleanses you of everything. Once you memorize it, it's going on its own in your brain. So every time you recite Astaghfirullah Bihi, you're getting 70,000 Astaghfirullahs out of that. But if it's going on and on like a broken record in the subconscious mind, you're constantly deleting conditions out of your DNA over and over and over and over. You don't even know you're doing it. And you'll look up a year later and be like, man, who am you completely became new. Behold, I make all things new. Think about that. Now, watch this. I'm going to show you something that I just found. Facts, alhamdulillah. And I know you know, Salihu, now, because you've been on this path. I know you know. That you can see the radiance in Salihu now's face. That Kaside is all, these Kasides are all in his blood. You can see it. There's certain ones you know when these things are being done or being used, because it's going to reroute and reform your physiology. And so you turn around and mess around and put Hadi to live with that and use the diet of Insan Kamil Masfara Muhammad and eat the navy bean, which cleanses the gut, repairs the lungs, which is responsible for breathing. That's two important functions. The eliminative from the gut, and then strengthening the respiratory so that you inhale, which spirit is air. So you're inhaling more spirit, right? Breathing in the ancient world is very, very important. But then the iodine and the other elements in the navy being actually repair the DNA. So imagine you eating a diet of Insan Kamil Masfara Muhammad, right? Reforming, changing and purifying, renewing your physical makeup, and then you're putting on top of it Kun Kaatiman to go in and build your disciplines, go in and build your adapt, your habits. And then that's your foundation for all of the other Kasais to lay on top of. This is a perfect formula, cheat sheet, shortcut to divinity and to Godhood, goddesshood realization. I'm talking about just a supreme way to get to it. Alhamdulillah, family. So you all know when okay, so let me get, thank you for that comment. That was a very, very good displaying your own words of power, words of meaning. Can anybody else add that for the last few minutes of this? Words of power versus words of meaning. Anybody else got anything? Salam. Sheikh Sali.
Of it, like, well, I would just, quick words of power. You know, they move the universe. They change things. Yes. Words of meaning, they just describe. Dog,
yes.
Dog. But you say y'all rock man. Forget it. That word, the word of God, they teach is no different than God Himself or God herself. The beginning was the word was with God, become flesh. So it has that alchemical effect. The word, power, and sound. Yeah, so words of power, it can change the whole environment. That's why I was like Kun Kaatiman, to make it quick. It made me patient with the process, like you put the seed in the ground. You know the plant gonna grow if you love it and grow. I done had to say be almost and it come about. And I was like, it just, how would you say, brought back my severe, not saying I was hungry. You know how you want to, they say man was created in haste, little do he give thanks. It brought back my conscious awareness of that severe, that name, that patience come forth like, don't think you won't answer. You know these words move to, you getting caught up in the physical, the 2 eyes, close your eyes like, and just, so with that I say peace, I'm running on again. Yeah. Words of power.
No. Cheikh.
Move the universe. Well, actually, like you say, because you're working at the casual level.
Yes.
This is something I'm not talking about like you look at fire. I done touched that fire. I know, not believe, I know it's real. So that's why I got like, hold up. I said, I'm going to this. They said, well, hold on. You patient for the day to go into the night. You did it. It's gonna work, you know.
That's
You
right.
micro, son. I'll humble you up a little. You know,
Yes.
yeah, whereas I
Man,
can't wait to talk to the person. Boy.
Oh, I didn't know if you was finished or we cut you off.
Cheikh, I was running. No, I shut up. Yeah. Well, y'all take it over, Cheikh. Take it over.
No, Cheikh. A master is one who can sum up a lot in a few words. That whole bill was so beautiful, but you broke it down so simple in the first part where you said words of power, change, move the universe, words of meaning just describe. I got chill bumps again. I just heard you say it both times because that is exactly it. Words and this is why the English language puts us at such effect, because it makes us think that we can't control the environment. And that's a beautiful thing too, because the people who created that language, we don't want them controlling the environment. Look at what they've done with what little bit they have control, destroyed it. So,
Yeah, example what you said. They got words of power, but not proper discipline in Sharia.
Exactly.
And went out amongst like they gave the little children machine guns. They were eavesdropping, picking up jewels, and like you say, you can get. Oh man, who feels it knows it. I got you. Peace.
Yes. Thank you for that. Yes, exactly. And so we see now. You got to remember we talked about in one of the other bills. We got trillions of years of this. If you take the Honorable Elijah Muhammad literally when he said that, and not just think he was giving us a black pride pep talk, we got trillions of years of history of watching human beings, generation after generation after generation after generation. The Quran say, travel the land and see what was the end of those before thee. That's the Quran saying, study history. What happened to people before? And we got generation after generation of this. And so the whole time we was checking it, creating checks and balances and being scientists about this, saying, okay, we can make it safer the whole goal the whole time for us as Allah was to get a perfect light. So civilizations came, they rose, they fell. Scientists in the background writing down, okay, this is why that civilization rose, this is why it fell. So next time we got to give a knowledge that does da 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 da. So by the time you get to Insan Kamil Masfar Muhammad, by the time you get to Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, all of it has been figured out. And all we got to do is just be a little. There's not much to ask of us to just say something that somebody else suffered like hell, literally, to go through to get. And all we got to do is just say it. This is why Allah says in the Holy Quran, if it were not for your prayers, I would not love you. We're not worthy of love if we won't even take the time to just say something that a powerful being already gave us. He didn't ask us to go get the power. He didn't ask us to develop the power. He said, just say this. Say He, Allah, is one. Just say it. Just take some time out of your day and say this. And this way I can come and live in and through you. All praises to Allah. When Sheikh Salih just said, I opened up to something from ancient Kemet that bore witness, Sheikh. It says, this is dealing with level 3 Shechem, the Shechem division of the spirit, which we've been talking about. That's in Spirit 3 called Seker. And we know that the seeker finds God in Seker, right? Because the 99 names are in Spirit 3, the attributes of God. This is the first of the 3 initiation stages that involve a total break with worldly interests. See, a break with worldly interests. What is Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba talking about in the first 3 or 4 verses of Kaatiman? He's talking about worldly interests, stuff that you should be avoiding. Like our sister was saying, stuff, if you modernize it, social media, all this stuff that's distracting us, worldly interests, break away from that, he's saying. And we must never lose sight of the fact that such an attitude to life with proper understanding and life force generation rituals, raising the salat, raising the salat, not making salat. That's an improper use of that, because the salat is at the base of the spine. That's the same thing that the Indians call kundalini. When we doing our positions in Raka, in the Rakas, when we raise up from Sajja, the salat, you can feel it come up and hum and buzz in your brain. That's an energy force generating ritual given to us by Almighty Allah himself. And he says the life force generation rituals serve to increase spiritual power to its highest level of manifestation. This individual has already gone through initiations that have revealed the fact that psychic power increases in direct relationship to the individual's living of truth in genuine life situations at the crossroads. See, all of these qasidas are time-marked points of when Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba was going through particular things. So this is why there's a kasai for everything. Sheikh Gaye was telling me, he's saying that there's probably kasais that murids have that other murids don't even have. And there's millions of murids, but each murid may have a kasai that another murid doesn't even have. So there's kasais that still haven't even been uncovered yet. Tons and tons of them, right? And not from the mere performance of spiritual exercise. So the individual's living of truth in genuine life situations at the crossroads, and not from mere performance of spiritual exercises, meditations, rituals. At this sphere is the center of the 50 sound units of power that are the basis of all physical manifestations. We must realize that they cannot be utilized for purposes that are predominantly personal. This is why the adab and the purification of the heart is so important. But if you go and do your own dua, there's a risk of you asking for something that's particularly personal. But if you instead use the dua of a saint, especially one Kadima Rasul, Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, there's no risk of that, because he didn't have personal interest. He only had the interest to be pleasing to Allah and to be the perfect instrument of Allah. So Allah can't say no to that prayer, and he won't say no to that prayer. That prayer will be answered, because it's not actually a prayer, it's a decree commanding the universe. So in essence, if I pick up a qasida and say it in a situation, like what Sheikh Sally was just saying, the words of power move the universe. So if I pick up a qasida Kaatiman and move it, say it to move a situation, that's not Sheikh Wali saying something. That's me taking Allah's words, telling the universe to do something. The universe doesn't hear me, it hears the words of Allah. If that makes sense. Allah will not love you if it were not for your prayers. Man, I understand that more and more each day. The more and more easier that these ways make it. Sheikh put a verse in one of the chats that we're supposed to do on Tuesday night. He's saying Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba taught that trials come into the world at a particular time. If you say these particular verses, then trials will be removed from you. So imagine after you knowing that, you not do the verse, and then you're walking around talking about what you're going through. You think Allah want to hit I gave you the means to avoid trial and you won't use it. This is how we should be. This is how our internal talk should be, family, with ourselves about these words of power. The time that it takes you to sit around and worry about something happening or deal with a problem, making deals with a problem, guess how you can really deal with the problem? By putting some words of power on it and making the universe move and shift in a different direction. Does that make sense? Y'all always do this to me. I'll start off saying I'm gonna stay short, I'm gonna say da, and then a fire just lights under me and I start going in all these different directions. So I'm gonna blame y'all for this. This is y'all fault. Because y'all such good listeners.
I take some of the blame.
You take some of the blame. Alhamdulillah. It's your fault, Cheikh, for being such a good listener and for sending me these intriguing questions that are showing that you are feeding. I blame you, Sister Darrah, for feeding on that Qasida and opening it up and bringing the contents back, and it's making Sheikh Farad drunk with Allah's wisdom coming from the teachings of Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba. This is a good high to have, one you don't want to come down from. So that being said, we are just at our time. So what I'm gonna do, I didn't cover everything that I wanted in these books, but I think we laid a pretty good base. And don't mind me if it seems redundant, because guess what? Falsehood is redundant. That's why we got to keep saying la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah over and over and over again, because we've been lied to over and over and over again. So Allah gives us the same method to undo the lies. Repetition, Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, the best teacher, especially if you're repeating something that's actual fact. And the only thing that's actual fact is la ilaha illallah. Everything else is arguable. La ilaha illallah is actual fact. Right? So let's do one recitation of Kaatiman and then go ahead and close out. If there's no more questions, concerns, or observations, I would like to close us out with this one recitation. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi wa huwa al-aliyyul azim.
Stuff we done lost the Cheikh.
The Rasta people say Bumba please, but Allah knows best.
Bismillah ar Rahim. Hopefully we get the Sheikh back in shortly so that he can give us that recitation of Kaatiman. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. While we're waiting for the Sheikh Farad to return to us, I do have a copy here, and we're just going to start with the recitation from what I have here. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. La hawla wala quwwata illa billahi wa huwa al-aliyyul azim. Kaatiman's first verse says, always strive to be stoic, you who are sincerely seeking knowledge, so you can spare yourself excessive trials and sorrows. Sustain your motivation so you can Verse 3, for knowledge is never granted to the one who fears the trials and pains of a healthy, moderate hunger. Know that Allah inspires those of his servants who maintain patience. Verse 4, O you who are ardently seeking knowledge, I pity those among you who do not continually revisit your lessons. Verse 5, do not overly concern yourself with the pursuit of wealth. Verse 7, stay away from fantasies of legally marriageable, young, or otherwise attractive women and perdition. And verse 8, O youthful one, do not prioritize this world over the hereafter. Whoever trades light for darkness will regret it. Of the 8 verses of Kaatiman. Anyone have any closing comments or thoughts
I'm back,
about
Cheikh.
those 8? Bismillah.
Yes, sir, Sheikh. My apology, the phone was dying out and I couldn't connect back to it. It wouldn't let me.
Glad you made it back.
Yes. So y'all see you all read the English of Kaatiman. So what we'll do is next week, after we do the prayers, we'll open up and we'll do some recitations of it. We probably, it'll take too long to do 55 of them, but we'll do some. And then next week we're gonna go purely into the diet. I think we laid a pretty good foundation, family, on the difference in why these are different from other prayers, and why it's even nice that we're calling them prayers. But I think that we laid pretty good foundation on that. So now what I want to do is finish up talking about the dietary part. I'm going to give some brief history that I'm still waiting on to find about Kaatiman toward the end. And if you have any questions for me now, we can ask them and then go ahead and close out in prayer. Thank you for this class. Cheikh is on fire. I feel like, man, this is an energy I can't even describe. Sheikh Sally, I think you did it. Once you start saying something shifted in the environment, for sure. So thank you for that, beloved.
If thanks, I got some thoughts. Inshallah, I'm gonna save for next week.
I mean, no, go ahead and share them if you want to. If you want to share now,
I'm not gonna forget. It's hot on my mind. We're gonna hold it for next week, inshallah.
we can use it now, Sheikh. If you want to give it now. Huh? Now I was saying, Sheikh, if you want to go ahead and do it, we could take it now. If you want to give them to us.
Oh, I would just wanted to say one thing about that. That's why Sheikh give us astaghfirullah, cleansing of the heart, and how you was building up Shariat, like wax on, wax off.
Yes.
Your life will become where the attribute will jump out, son of the moment, as you need it. But we have to have our intentions pure and purification of the heart, the polish of the heart.
Yes.
To speed up because I can reflect sometimes when you could be, like you said, it's not you, it's Allah coming through you, but at the same time, your intentions cannot be lined up with the will of Allah, because as some people say, what's clear from me was from Allah. What was not clear, what would seem not to be what right, was of my lower self or of the Nas.
Right.
I have to be clear that to establish the kun fire kun and to get the fullest of effect of japa and mantra and words of power is to have a clear heart. And remember, as you teach that, what is it, the second gut, the gut is the second mind.
Yeah, the first brain, the second brain. Yes, indeed.
And while we do this a lot in hatha yoga, because you don't want to, the body has to be prepared for the fullness of that power, that energy rising too. That's the purpose of clean thoughts, exercise, diet, in the law. Because sometimes people be like, I want power, they get boring. Like they think we're getting dogmatic, but it's a preparation stage.
Yeah.
So when you begin to the heart and see the truth and begin to taste of a Arif Billah, know of a God, your attributes and attentions will be exactly with the will of Allah, no different than as we breathe.
Yeah.
The heartbeat was the breeze blowing, our eyes blink.
Yeah.
I'm speaking from my own personal experience, because once again, all good is from Allah and all ill is from myself. Because I give one more, I remember the Sheikh gave a zikr, was like, if you do this, you will get money or you can smack me. Of course it worked. But what did I do with the money when I get it? When I got it? Astaghfirullah. Forgive me. Right. So I just wanted to touch on that. That was on my mind. That was all. Because I keep going on and on. That I will say peace. I mean,
Cheikh, thank you for that. And you know what? You just gave me something that I'm going to use. There's a handout that I teach in class, in the Dr. Detox class, that comes from a book, Hatha Yoga. We're going to read that next week. Thank you for that, Cheikh. We're going to talk from Hatha Yoga, because Hatha Yoga is the perfect system to use, because in that system of yoga, you do not go higher until you address what we would call in ancient Kemet, the Geb factors. Geb are all of the earthly things: energy, hygiene, personal hygiene, stuff dealing with energy like feng shui. These are the things that you were taught when you first come into the mystery school, and you don't graduate to even begin discussing nothing else until those things are addressed. And it's like he said, it's preparation. People do get bored and start thinking, man, we doing this religious dogmatic stuff. No, this religious quote unquote dogmatic stuff is going to stop you from abusing power once we hand it to you. And it's really going to weed you out to even get power, because a real pure-hearted person would never avoid something, no matter how boring, quote unquote, it is, for being mundane, because a pure person wants to be perfect. You want perfection. So you would try to dwell in that as much as possible. I remember, I'll make this my closing point. When we were at the tour last year that started in Flint, Michigan, I don't know how many of you were there, but we did a tour last year. And at that tour, we was all sitting around Cheikh, and he had given out a particular station for those of us that were there. I won't go into what the station is, but he talked about it. And he was like, don't abuse it. This particular station that I just granted y'all, don't abuse it. And so when he said that, I immediately thought, now I hint you this much. It has something, it's kind of like a Astaghfirullah Bihi. It has something to do with the way that your sins get recorded. I'll give y'all that much. I'm pretty sure somebody was on this call that was there and know exactly what I'm talking about. But I remember when he said that, the first thing I thought was, oh man, I really got to do Astaghfirullah Bihi more so that I don't abuse it. So you see that, you see the heart, this is the kind of attitude you're supposed to have, because another kind of person would have been like, okay, bet, now I can just do the. No, I'm afraid of that. I'm leery of that state that can make me think about abusing the power. So it makes me want to purify more. So never abandon. This is what Kaatiman is really teaching us. To be bottled up. Cheikh Gaye told us. To be concealed, to be bottled up, but be bottled up in understanding the purpose of a dab. Kaatiman is the perfect embodiment, instrument, toolbox for building a dab. If Insan Kamil is your goal, you need to start at Kaatiman, because all of the elements are there that you're not going to have to worry about. Once your kun becomes fire kun, see, you spend the first part being bottled up, being focused on your, is really saying focus internally. Take your eyes off the world. Take your eyes off of other people and put it completely on you and clean house inside. Then he tells you what to clean house in each verse. There's something you need to avoid, something you need to do. The fear of hunger, lusting, being careful about men, the careful about the women you deal with, the careful about this, hiding yourself, covering yourself with the veil of knowledge to avoid mishaps. All of these kind of things, he's giving you the details and the premise of the attitude that you're going to need on the way to Iman. So Kaatiman is unavoidable. You need this. Even if you don't need this, you need this anyway, to make sure that you don't have any seeds of rebellion or seeds of that which is haram inside, if that makes sense. Yes, to be a master is to be a master of the basics. Absolutely. Absolutely. Said best. That is it. To be a master is to be a master of the basics. So the true master doesn't want to skip anything. So with that being said, any more last comments, questions, concerns? I can only imagine the questions that's raised now. There's a particular person that's on the call that's kind of a mad scientist like Sheikh Farad, so I know she's thinking. I can only imagine the questions coming next week from this talk. Alhamdulillah. So any last many questions, concerns, or observations before we close out?
Bismillah. I did have one thought.
Okay. Alhamdulillah.
So I was thinking about the version in English that Brother Idris read out loud is different than the one that I read in the app. But I think his version is more beautiful, but it's interesting because the Arabic doesn't change. So I'm looking forward to learning to read Arabic, because I may interpret the words differently again, but also reading different variations in the English has a different impact. And had I only heard his version, I wouldn't have seen the word veil and had the other thoughts. But if I processed it in Arabic, I might have had a completely different thought. Right.
Elijah Muhammad said that this is why we must learn Arabic, because the Arabic takes us deeper into the science of the self. His exact words. We will learn. Most of our problems is that we thinking in English. Sheikh Idris, tell her why I laughed when she mentioned your version.
Salam, you said it was a little bit different, and that some of the meaning was interpreted differently.
Yeah. She she came to the same conclusion, because remember, I got off the call. I got off the call right after class and called Sheikh Idris immediately. I said, brother, that's not what we're reading. Where did you get yours from? And he started laughing, but that was a King Idris version of Kaatiman. And would you share with us, Sheikh, your reasons that you told me why you did your own?
Well, most of it obviously is based on what Sheikh Sufi says, where he talks about how certain words, the way that they're translated is based on their meaning, and it doesn't necessarily translate to the same meaning here in the West. For example, when you see that, well, I always cringe when I see it, fear Allah, the fear of Allah. And that's not my vibration. So when I see fear, I got to translate that to obey.
Yes.
Or I translate that to remember.
Yes. Yes.
So
yes.
it has a different vibration. We've had enough of the vibration of fear, so that doesn't really jive.
Indeed.
Where we are.
Yes.
So when I'm looking at it throughout the whole Kasai, I'm taking some of those words that have been translated, because again, these are words that have been translated into English out of their mother tongue. Right. So it's not like they're so completely untouchable in their translation, particularly when they're not from this culture.
Yes,
so
yes.
That's how some of those things have to be looked at from my humble perspective.
Yes, I mean. So that's why I laugh, sister, because you came to the same conclusion. That shows you're paying a great deal of attention. And the thing that I like too is Sheikh Idris mentioned about the part where it was saying avoid wealth. He definitely retranslated that, because you're not gonna win nobody in the West.
No.
Unless you're going after some Hare Krishna followers that's gonna sit on the side of the road and just do kasais with a plate expecting money to come. Nobody's gonna hear you if you come to them saying, "Spirit, don't think about wealth at all." That's not gonna work here in America. So I really did appreciate his translation. But once again, as valuable as that is, we don't have to put a lot of weight on it, family, when we consider what we've taught about words of meaning and words of power. Because when we say these words, they're not registering an intellectual meaning anyway. So you just want to kind of have an idea of what it's trying to say. That's what you need the English for. You want to know what it's trying to say. But you're not really concerned that it's saying that, because regardless of what they say it says, when you say these words, the universe moves. That's all I'm concerned with. So my main thing is I want to just make sure that I'm not telling the universe to do something I'm not ready to happen right now. Like there's a verse in one of the Qasidas that says something like, you kept away particular people or something away from me. And let's just say you was a person that was building relationships, trying to get back closer to your family, but they disbelievers, and some of them may be hypocrites. And you doing this Qasida and then wondering why no matter what you do, you can't seem to get close to them, because you basically told the universe to move them out of your life. So that's the only reason I need to know what the Qasida is trying to say. But at this point, even that I don't care about. If Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba said it, I trust it. And when we listening to somebody, we should be listening to a person that has what we want and is in the place we desire to be. And all of us should be desiring to be Qadim, masters like him. Sheikh Sufi said he didn't come to just make disciples. That sounds like Master Farah Muhammad. He said, I didn't come to make worshipers. I came to make gods. Sheikh Sufi said, I didn't come to make disciples. I came to make masters. So if mastery is our intent, just, all we have to do is just say the Kasai is understanding that their words are power. All right, family. So let's go ahead and close out. We're going to do, let's go ahead and clear the slate for us with a whopping 70,000 astaghfirullah. So I'm going to close out with astaghfirullah bihi and a few other prayers, and then we'll go home. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi wa huwa al-aliyyul azim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Allahumma salli wa sallam wa barik ala Sayyidina wa Malana Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi wa takabal mini liwachi kal karimi kali taiban ilayka bi astaghfirullah bihi. Astaghfirullah lazima wa tu alayhi min zawahirin wa min guyub sa'altuhu bahaki wa tilahi makfiratan min jumlatil manahi tubtulahu min jumlatis sagairi mehal kabairi wa min dama'iri yafiru likfir kalimata karama wa ma takara wa ma bainahuma fa imni al ilma wa zidni ilma wa hamalan wa abadan wa fama wa rabbi alikshifil huliman nafiha wa jal hayati min shaka imaniha ikshif liya isa'ira wa gaumida Kaatiman kashafa suran gamida Lijma jami hama tafara kalada Kaatiman arkadi wasafil kalada Lakula da tafakar lazamaya Rabi bikun watasiman kalamiya Abliya ya akuramu fitilawa Kairan kasiran mekawa halawa Barikliya lahuma fiya yati Wajalfu adiwa tanawayati Abliya kani bishra kuliman yatu Waliza wa ahidor abin mahal guyub Fatiha. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghayril maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Salatul Fatih. Allahumma ya karamu salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad al-Fatihi limuglika wa katimi lima sabaka nasiru haki wa hadi nasiratika mustaqim wa ala alihi haqqa qadrihi wa miqdarihi al-azim. Salatu Kamil. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin biyadari fasu maklukati. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin biyadari ash'ar wa majudati. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin biyadari hurufullahi wa da'awati. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin biyadadil badayati wa nihayati min ma'umatumi wa majudi ala bahdila fadi wa sallallahu ala kaidu kawkihi Muhammad wa alihi ajma'in. Allahumma asli ummata Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma farij ummati Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma irham ummata Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma asli ummata Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma farij ummati Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma irham ummata Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma asli ummata Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma farij ummati Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma irham ummata Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Oh Allah, we thank you for this gathering. We pray that you will raise the maqam of all of the murids in our order. We pray for a extremely exalted raising of maqam for our Cheikh and his protection on his journey as he goes to acquire to bring more knowledge to us and help us to be the masters that he deems us to be. We pray that you will allow us to jump into these practices like never before, so that we'll be more perfect instruments of your use and be more perfect houses for you to dwell in. As Kaabas for the world, when they see us, they will see you. We ask this in the name of our Master Sayyidina Muhammad and by the Barakah of Serene Tuba Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba. Barke Serene Salihu, Barke Sheikh Bafal, Barke Serene Falu, Barke Sheikh Sufi Ba. Ameen.
Ameen.
Barke Sheikh Sufi Ba, 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 Barke Sheikh Sufi Ba. Assalamu alaikum, family. See you same time, back channel, same back time next week. And remember to continue to feel good like Allah always should. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Wa alaikum salam.
Dear Jeff.
Like, yeah.